Hello, and welcome to brAVe Skills, which is the practical offshoot of the brAVe Space podcast, where we talk, usually together, about things related to leadership, corporate culture, and of course, the technology industry, specifically AV industry, but we do believe that all of these subjects apply to just about anyone. We're going to re-release an episode that's one of my favorites today. It's actually the second episode we ever recorded called Listen Up, Effective Listening. And the reason that is one of my favorites is because, one, I'm an old school AV guy, and I like the topic of audio, I like the topic of listening, but also because I think there's a lot of practical benefits to thinking about the concepts that we're in this conversation. You know, they say that 90% of any good production is the audio. Okay, well, that makes it sound like what we hear is pretty important when on the job, right? But isn't it also funny that whether you're in the business of audiovisual technology or not, effective listening is always a crucial skill for any professional. So it's that concept that we want to explore in this re-released episode. One of the main takeaways for me when Britt and I recorded this was that there's no substitute for this skill when it comes to effective leadership. There just isn't. There's no get good quick scheme, no magic bullet, no time-saving strategy for developing the skill. It takes time, it takes practice, and it takes intentional repetition. And it absolutely takes a human touch. Sorry, AI. Just gotta say that. A leader, big L or little L, leverages listening not merely to process information so that they don't sound like an idiot when it's their moment to respond. They do it because it's a key aspect of showing another human that you respect them, that you honor them, and that what they have to say is of some importance, regardless of whether you, as the listener, understand it or not. I have seen technicians and service professionals fall into the trap of relying on their own knowledge to gain credibility with a client. And don't get me wrong, that is a vital part of the equation. If you don't know what you're talking about, I'm not so sure why we should be having a conversation that ends with me paying you for services. However, I can say that humans, since I am one, respond more to the way that you make us feel than what you say. And when I see a service professional showing signs of effective listening before they begin regaling me with spec sheets and technical speak, I know I've got not just a potential vendor, but a potential partner here. So if you want to gain credibility, listen more than you speak. Trust me. Customers speak with their wallets and markets speak with their time. If you want more of either, show them that you are willing to take the time to listen when you are on the site call. You'll have plenty of folks lining up to receive your work once you do, because the act of listening effectively and then doing something with what you heard speaks volumes on your behalf. So, we hope you enjoy this re-released episode of brAVe Skills called Listen Up, Effective Listening.
brAVe Skills is a practical offshoot of the brAVe Space podcast, where we will explore some of the most impactful topics. Let me redo that.
No worries. I'm actually flying blind here because I realize I have it written down. I could be reading it. So I'm like, no, I'm going to be good. I'm going to know when she's done and I'm going to get it, which is ironic considering where what I might say later on in this episode. Just realized.
There will come a day when we have the intro memorized. It's coming. We're almost there.
I mean, we could just get the gist as well, I suppose.
Hello, AV Tweeps and AV Tweeps adjacent. Welcome to brAVe Space, or in this case, brAVe Skills. brAVe Skills is a practical offshoot of the brAVe Space podcast, where we explore some of the topics most impactful to the world of business, corporate culture, and leadership. I'm Britt.
And I'm Leon. And like we said, we want to focus on skills with this show, so we're hoping that something that we cover today will be helpful for you, or by extension, someone you know.
Before we get started here, we have 2 disclaimers for you. The first is that opinions expressed in this podcast are our own and not necessarily representative of our institutions, companies, or sponsors of the show. And the second is that we appreciate listeners' grace and understanding as we tackle topics we are not necessarily experts in.
So now, on to the episode. Okay. All right.
So, all right. On today's episode, I had picked the topic active listening or effective listening because we often hear the advice, listen, don't just wait for your turn to talk, but we don't really unpack what that means. So we figured we'd do a little bit unpacking here today. And Leon, when we had started to plan this out, you told me that it was very timely and has been coming up for you a lot. So I'm curious to know about that.
Boy, oh boy. So I'm a manager, but also in my job, what my job is, which I won't bother explaining fully on this episode, I'll just say communication is incredibly important to what I do, not just as a manager of a team, but because of what my role is in the company. I'm doing a lot of communication. And something very timely that happened in our company, for one, was the concept of we had kind of a mandatory managers training. It's something that our HR team just does every once in a while, which is great. We talk a lot about certain soft skills, and the person who came to present to us made one particular statement in his whole presentation that stuck with me, which was that oftentimes communication requires a lot of self-reflection while you're communicating. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you said that. It's really kind of timely, you pointing out that fact. But apart from that, it's also come up in other areas as well, where there are folks that I have worked with, folks I know even in my personal life, where I found myself calling to attention this idea that if I am listening to somebody, what's not happening in the exact moment is my mouth is not moving. I'll put it that way. And these were not like heated conversations either. It's come up quite a few times where I'm like, I guess, coaching people on communication sometimes, and that's one of the things that I find myself sometimes sharing with folks, is that just listening in general is just this incredibly fundamental skill for everybody, but especially for people who are in any kind of position of leadership. And it's interesting to hear everyone's sort of take on what the power of listening is. How do you know if you're really listening well? All of that. So yeah, I just thought it was really timely that you had that be the topic right now.
What's really interesting too is I have been reading a lot lately about AI and how it fits into education and the sort of skills that students will need to learn now that we are becoming an increasingly digital world with artificial intelligence. And one of the things that I've learned is one of the things that humans can do that the AI cannot is this effective listening thing. So, like a human can take in a lot more context, not just with the words being used, but with tone, body language, facial expression, that AI is not there. It might never be there. And sometimes AI will get an answer wrong because it just doesn't understand the context that a human might understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I think AI is really amazing, and I'm always a person that I am interested to see exactly how far we take it in certain applications. But it is funny to me how it's sad to me. It's not funny, actually. It's funny in a sad way. I'll see businesses that are advertising, "Hey, you could just let AI do this and not actually listen to your customers." No, that's my response. Is I don't think there should ever be a point, whether it's machine or otherwise, there should never be a point where we're pawning off the task of doing effective listening to something else. That's so dangerous. And if someone else is doing that kind of on your behalf, you need to know that that's a really trusted source. And yeah, like you said, a machine isn't able to catch all the nuance, at least certainly not yet, that we can. And I think there's power to that, but I think it's not just there's power to it. Like there's a reason. It's sort of like you can see it's like almost like a by design with us as people kind of thing. We relate really well to one another. Like think about we're having a baby soon, so I think maybe I'm thinking about babies a lot. But I've heard it said oftentimes that a baby's eye contact and you making eye contact with the baby ends up being so just so impactful for a lot of different reasons. Going to go into the animal kingdom, there's this whole idea of like imprinting and all of this other stuff. I'm just saying we connect with each other. We're meant to connect with each other, and there are things that are just innate and natural for us in that. And I think this topic is great because it's calling to question: do we understand some of those connection points? Do we understand some of the things that are really, really impactful when it comes to communication from the standpoint of listening to one another? And I just can't imagine having a machine do that for us, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring a good point in that we listen to understand. And I think that is a huge piece of this puzzle. Listen to understand versus listen until it's your turn to say what you want to say. So, if you're approaching a conversation with curiosity and just really wanting to be in that conversation, I think that goes a long way in terms of effective listening versus just I don't know, just kind of being there but not really present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you and I both come from AV, and I also think it's interesting because audio obviously is important to us, and we do a lot of technical listening, where we listen for things happening in systems. But this idea of listening to people, um, there's a part of me that thinks that there may be some similarities, but I would ask you this kind of broad question of how would you define in a people context effective listening? What does that really mean for you?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it is very much listening to understand. And I want to understand the whole picture. So, not just explicitly what you're saying to me, but I'm also listening for tone. I'm watching your body language. I'm seeing how engaged you are in this to see, like, how is it that you are expecting to meet you here? And, what are you needing from me? Out of this conversation. I think it kind of goes back to a little bit of that servant leadership that you and I talk about and feel passionate about. I'm coming from a place of service, and I want to know, like, if you are coming to me with information or a question, I am seeking to understand how I fit into this puzzle you're creating for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's effective listening in this case. It's a whole person kind of a thing. It's not even just the words that are coming out of the mouth. It's you're talking about noticing body language, all of these things, noticing that we communicate in lots of different ways. It's not just one. We have a uh, we as a person that's worked with clients a lot, I think sometimes I've noticed that sometimes the client is describing what they want, but there's more than just their words. And it's my job to figure out or to help get to the answer of what are we really trying to achieve,
Mhm.
because they're going to do their best to give me that answer, but it's kind of a two-way street. But it ends up being really useful for me to make sure I'm asking the right questions. Sometimes that's using my mouth to ask the questions. Other times it's asking a question about what I'm seeing, right?
Mhm.
This person is saying a thing, but why do they sound so upset? Okay, that means something. There might be something more going on than just what I'm hearing verbally, and maybe I should address that kind of thing. And again, those are those things that I just don't feel like we're at the point where a machine could certainly do that. But it's
No.
definitely something for us to practice. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm curious how you approach that because I know for me, I like to kind of just like name and claim things. I can be a very direct person. For some people, that's off putting. I get it. But, it just is who I am. So I will say, like, you're sounding a little frustrated to me right now. Can you explain to me, like, are you frustrated? Let's unpack that because I feel like if there's any negative emotion in play, I want to understand it and I want to try to dispel it if I can. Because if you're in a bad place, then we're not going to get to a good place very effectively. Do you do something similar? Or like, what's your process if you are hearing a tone or seeing body language that tells you like this person's not super happy to be having this conversation?
I'm actually in the same boat as you. I think that all things that cause any kind of a head scratch should be addressed. They should be confronted. That doesn't have to be a negative thing or a scary thing. It just means I need to be in the practice of not letting things go if I think that they matter. And also, I may not know if they matter, so I need to just find out. So it could very well be that someone's having a bad mood and that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Cool, but I kind of want to know, does it have anything to do with what we're talking about? So my approach usually is to do something similar to what you said, with like one tweak. I usually say, here's what I'm hearing. I'm kind of putting it back on me just in case there's a negative thing. So I'm never putting words in someone's mouth, which is a really tricky thing to do. I kind of have this idea, which we could talk about in a moment as well, that effective listening is sort of proven by certain things that you do as well, after the listening part is over. But I would usually start by saying, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing. This is what it sounds like to me. And there's two great things that come from that. One, if there's an emotional part that I may be misunderstanding, I can say what I'm thinking and that person can correct me or say, actually, that's true. Also, didn't know you could tell that. So thanks for letting me know. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we don't fix our face when we want to. But then the other thing that's great to me by doing that is it's giving me an opportunity to show the person that I'm trying to listen, because I'm also trying to summarize something that I just heard or saw. So they're seeing that it's an active thing. You said effective listening is listening to understand. I think the kind of next sort of level with that, or a piece of that, is the active part. Not so active that I'm interrupting you to talk while you're talking, not that kind of active, but there's an action I'm doing that conveys that I listened. And then you might give me more and go back and forth. Now this person has to listen to what I say to make sure I'm right, and back and forth. And so we're both making sure that we're listening to each other. Yeah. But definitely approach. I do not like to leave conversations with a question mark. I find that the devil is in the details, and that question mark that I left bites me in the butt later on. So if I have your time right now, I might as well ask for it now.
Yes, absolutely. And that reminds me, just not just the important checkpoints of noticing emotions, naming them, making sure we're all on the same page, but also the literal action of who does what by when. A lot of conversations need to be wrapped in that bow of who is doing what by when. And I feel like that piece of the puzzle often goes missing. And I don't know if it's because I'm used to the higher ed environment. We're a very special, unique little vertical with our habits. But it seems like we do a lot of talking, we're in a lot of meetings, but everyone kind of brings these ideas to the table, and then it's like, I'm glad I got to share my ideas, and they're done. And I'm like, we're not done.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm gonna throw to a question that you had brought up here. What does what does effective listening actually feel like? If you are the person that's being listened to, I think I'd say that.
Yeah. For me, like, I feel heard, like someone's effectively listening to me. I feel heard when they affirm me in some way, that I heard you say, that kind of recap. And I feel like I'm getting a genuine response from them, not like a canned response, like they got a manual in their head somewhere, but like an authentic connection with that person.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I just think of the scenario you just mentioned, where someone may not be conveying the who, the what, like who should be doing something and when. When that, I would assume that if you're in a scenario where that's happening and you don't like that, you're probably doing something to convey that you would like that to be different. And if that is continuing, that to me feels like someone's not listening, right?
Mm,
I'm saying like, I kind of need to know, like, when does this need to be done? What's the detail? And if it's, so for me, one of those things is, that conveys that someone is effectively listening. It feels like there's progress. It feels like there's
mm,
progress moving forward. If it feels like we're just spinning our wheels or stuck in something and not moving forward, chances are we've had an opportunity to, as in someone's brought something up in some way. And so, yeah, that doesn't feel like effective listening. So my way of answering that is sort of what it doesn't feel like,
mm,
helps, I think, show what it does feel like. But with this being a practical show, I'd love to talk about this idea of how we would prepare ourselves to actually listen effectively.
mhm,
I said that I have some examples of people that I know in my personal life and my professional life who have found, and been told that they might struggle with this a little bit. And so
mm,
they've actually chosen to work on this concept of effective listening. And I imagine that there's not a small number of people who might be listening to this show who have been told at some point or have thought, I might need to work on this a little bit, or at least care enough about my communication to work on this. Um, so are there things that come to your mind? I've got some things that come to my mind on that. How to
For
prepare.
me, I would say be prepared for a conversation. I don't believe in going into meetings without an agenda. So just having something, even if it's just a rough outline of this is what we're going to talk about, so that you make sure the key points that people want addressed are in fact addressed. That's a huge part of feeling heard.
Mhm.
Like you actually were able to take the topic to the table and have it covered and not ignored. And I also think it's important to, I think this like action piece is a part of it. I think you have
Mhm.
to be mindful of what you're actually able to do. So, both what's realistically in your control and what realistically you have the minutes for. Because for me, a big part of feeling heard is someone doing what they say they'll do. And that is
Mhm.
also like a big part of my leadership philosophy, do what you say you will do. So I can walk away from a conversation feeling heard in that moment, but if time passes and things fall through the cracks or someone doesn't do what they said they would, now I don't feel heard anymore. And it starts to feel like, oh, was that not actually that important? Like you start to question how that conversation went or if there was a disconnect. So just really going in with that level of preparedness of this is what we're going to talk about, and realistically, like these are the actions that I can take when it comes to the who's doing what by one piece.
Yeah. That idea of, you really hit on something that I think is actually a powerful point, that um, we've mentioned trust on this show before and the importance of that. If we were to answer the question of why is this even important, like why are we even talking about this, right? Why is effective listening important? I think it's a key factor in contributing to how well people trust each other, certainly
Mhm.
how well they trust the leadership. So if you've expressed something is important and then it's not really taken seriously, you A, don't feel like someone's listening, but B, your trust is being eroded right there. And that is a very hard thing to get back.
Yeah.
um, I think that's really really rough. So thinking about, am I going into the conversation prepared to do that? I think is a good thing to have in your mind. On my side, I would say a one simple thing is, it's kind of like having an agenda, is come prepared to listen.
Mm,
Like prepare your mind to do it. Like actually commit that this is what you're going to do before you do it. I I am a firm believer that our bodies follow our minds. Yeah, I think a thing, then do the thing. There are times that I might have just a physical reflex to something, sure, but if I'm wanting to do a thing, then I should probably just make sure I'm already prepared to do that before I go in. You started the episode by mentioning the concept of listen. Don't just wait for your turn to talk.
mhm,
Waiting for your turn to talk is something you have to make yourself not do, especially if the conversation is one that you're passionate about.
Right.
For any reason.
Yeah.
It could be you're excited because you love it. It could be you're excited because you hate the conversation. Either way, you're passionate. So yeah, in my mind, it's the mouth follows the mind. So tell myself, I had a manager once who did this. He knew that he would interrupt a lot, and he did it because when he was just getting passionate, it was just hard for him to not say things. It's just an internal thing. It was not ever meant to be rude. It was more like, oh, I want to be in this conversation. So he would do it. And he wouldn't realize that he was talking on top of people until someone raised their hand. I was one of those people. Again, I'm not afraid of confrontation. Raised their hand and said, hey, this is happening. So he not only would go into scenarios thinking that I'm going to make sure that there's a little bit of pause. That was his thing. He would make sure after anything someone said, he knew that there was a little bit of air before he opened his mouth, just to make sure he didn't step on anything. But he would also then ask later. He would have a couple of trusted people who would ask for feedback later to be like, how did I do? I think I did okay. Did I do what I needed to? And that's nothing to be ashamed of. I think leaders maybe sometimes be afraid of having like accountability partners, but it's a people job. So go to people that you trust to help you build that up. And to this day, he's still one of the most amazing managers I've ever had. He's sort of like, there's a standard, and it's kind of like everyone's either at that standard or they're below it, as far as I'm concerned.
I love that.
He listens to the show, actually. I hope he knows who I'm talking about. So that'd be nice. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's so important to, we talked in the last episode about putting the ego aside. That's a part of this. Put the ego aside and be willing to get feedback from people and recognize, oh, I kind of do this thing that's not great. Let me work on it. Like, that's so powerful. That's a part of both personal and professional growth. And I do want to say one thing I thought of when you were talking about being prepared was at ISE last year. I went to a session that was held by Ifat Chaudhry, and she said she does something with her team called the 1 minute whine. So she puts 1 minute on a timer, and they can just bleh out for 1 minute anything that's on their mind in that moment that's going to block them from being an effective communicator in that meeting, because you never know what's going on in someone's plate. You know, if you're trying to sit down and talk about an upgrade to a classroom and that person in the back of their mind constantly is like, my kid is sick, like, you're never going to be able to really communicate in that moment. So giving them that 1 minute of uninterrupted time for them to go, my kid is sick, I was up all night, whatever. I don't have kids, so I shouldn't have chose that example. I don't know. You know, give them the space to get it off their chest. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. At first, when I heard this, I was like, "Oh, that sounds great." And then for a moment, I went, "Wait, that sounds like chaos. Is everyone talking at the same time? That's like the opposite of what we want to have happen here." Then I realized it's probably not that. I was thinking it's just a lot of people doing word vomit all at once and then going, "Oh, I feel better." Do we all feel better?
One at a time, but I somehow like your version a little bit better. I kind of like the cacophony of complaints.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'm pretty sure if this was like a kindergarten, so you're working talking about classrooms, and I'm sure that's all collegiate classrooms. But if you were working in a space where there were kindergartners, this would probably be pretty effective. Just be like, everyone, just get it out right now. Everyone at the same time, enjoy it. Okay. All right, time's up. Yes. Now we're focusing, right? We're focusing. Okay. Everyone was happy about that. Right. Let's move on. Can I share an example from school?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to take you back in time, or I'm going to take you back to high school Leon.
We're on a journey.
Yeah. High school Leon, just as handsome. No, just kidding. It's pretty awkward. I was a theater kid. All right. So I'm telling you exactly how awkward. I was a theater kid. I did tech theater. It actually has a lot to do with how with my involvement in AV, to be honest, in brAVe. But I did a lot of on stage and off stage stuff. And I had a teacher, shout out Pat Quinn, if you're listening, you did awesome. She told us about a technique for for acting that to me has stood the test of time. And it's one of those things where I could say to you, hey, do you know what separates a good actor and a bad actor? Which is an overly simplified thing to say, but it works for my point. Active listening. Not necessarily the personification of a character, but the active listening part. So in theater, an audience is watching everyone on that stage, including the people in the background. So your lead might be up front saying a bunch of stuff, singing, something like that. But all the people in the background, they're selling that whole performance. Active listening is something we actually spent more time on than you would think when it came to learning these skills as students. And I feel like there's an exact parallel when it comes to just communication. So she had this method that she called the law. I don't know if she made it up or not, but it was the law. There was no E, it was TH and then LAW. Okay. I want to go over that real briefly because I think it works. I think it's like a practical, you could do this when you're speaking. She was saying when you're listening, you start with a thought, you look at who's talking, you will then do some kind of action that probably also corroborates the fact that you were listening to them. There's some impact based on what they said, and then words come out of your mouth, but it's a sequence. And we actually thought about that all the time. So think in real life, if someone were to say, oh my gosh, I asked my girlfriend to marry me and she said yes. In general, that would be something that most people would respond to that. There'd be some kind of response. If you saw someone say that and saw a person sitting next to them who's just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you saw someone that was just like, because in an actor's, what's going on with an actor is they're thinking to themselves, I'm waiting for my cue. I'm waiting for my cue. Are they finished with the line? Because I know what I'm about to say. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. And then they say it and they go, oh, I did a good thing. We were nervous about our intros earlier, listeners. And I had a moment where I thought, I'm going to mess up the intro. I'm going to forget to say, now here's the episode when Britt finishes her part. And that's all I have to say there. Super ironic. But that concept is one that we can do. It came from the world of theater. It came from like acting, but it holds true if we're talking about effective listening. My thoughts should be about what the person's saying. I look at them. I have eye contact with them. We are millennials, and we tend to do things like, oh, I'm just going to look at this while I'm talking to you. Mm-hmm. That's not, no, we got to, no, not okay. Action, I might move in, I might lean in or something, or I might do some other emotion. I might walk towards you, something like that. I might nod my head, those kinds of things. And then I say words. Mm-hmm. It's not just I'm repeating back, which is effective, but there are other things also going on. And those are all very natural things. If we're doing all of those, people, I think, will feel that there's effective listening, but you're also effectively listening, because then I guarantee anything you say after that point comes from a place of understanding.
Yeah, I love that. I love that that is absolutely practical advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still use it today. I'm in my 30s, and I am not going to lie to you. I actually use it when I'm presenting things, when I'm in one-on-ones, when I'm in meetings that might be a little bit heated with anybody. I'm thinking, all right, we're not going to respond too fast. The law. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about what they're saying. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm thinking about what they're saying. And then move on from there. But yeah, shout out to my high school drama teacher for that one.
Yay, shout out. I love it. Mm-hmm. All right, did we have a listener question for this episode?
We didn't. I was actually thinking of starting the episode by saying that, in a way, to be honest, everything that I've ever seen, even online, about this concept is essentially we're basically answering the world's questions, because there's just you had a great slew of questions in there. So I figured this time maybe just wouldn't even mention the idea of a listener question and just move past it, because we don't always have them.
You're welcome, world.
Yeah.
All right, well,
that's going to be the stinger at the end of the episode. It's just going to be Britt going, "You're welcome, world," and I'll throw in a mic drop sound. You talked and we listened. You wanted this.
We deliver. All right.
Mhm.
Well, then, I mean, you just gave us a super practical law. I feel like that is an amazing action item to take away from this to start putting that into practice whenever you can. What other action items would you say that we have?
I actually love one that you had brought up, this idea of the mindfulness bit. That
Mm.
if you have distraction going on in your mind, there's some benefit to practicing in your daily life, expanding your capacity to process more things. So the idea of practicing mindfulness ahead of communications is really only going to probably benefit you when you're actually in a scenario where you're talking to folks.
Yeah, and speaking of mindfulness, like you had mentioned the I have device in my face.
Mhm.
If you one put device down and two tell device not to ping and ding you at that time, either turn off or do not disturb because it just takes one noise for you to be out of the game and now focused on some other thing, which isn't fair to the person who you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Good action items.
Sorry, I'm stopping because it's normally you that closes. So I was like, yeah, that's good. I
I
should
will
probably say something. Sorry.
close now. Here's our outro. We hope that this episode gave you something new to think about in your professional and personal journey, and maybe even expanded your perspective on your own experiences. If you have any topics you would like to discuss on the show, you can let us know on X, LinkedIn, or Google form. Basically, Google us, you'll find us, and you can reach out and let us know what your question is that you would like addressed. If you liked this show, please let us know and let the world know by giving us as many stars as possible in a rating on your podcast player of choice and leave us a review. For easy updates, be sure to subscribe to brAVe Space.
My face hurts so bad because I honestly was about to crack up.
We tackle topics we are not necessarily experts in.
So now, on to the episode.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
I did it.
I'm so proud of you.
I was like, I'm sure I'm supposed to say something else. I'm sure I'm supposed to say something else. I was thinking I would find it, and then I didn't find it. Obviously, this is fine to cut because I always have a little bit of a cut after the intro. So I just, sigh of relief, did it.
That was perfect. All right. You're welcome, world. All right. Well,